Thanks, Steph, for handing it over to me. I appreciate you all for having me today. I'm really excited about today's keynote to just engage with you all. This is going to be interesting because you guys know I'm a very interactive person, and this conversation is more virtual. But I don't want you to feel like I'm talking at you. Let's keep this conversation going. Obviously, the chat is available. And again, I'm really excited to be here today to present this keynote, which is the human side of AV, where technology meets storytelling, because I think where we need to go as an industry is we need to start designing experiences that connect people, not just devices. So let's set the vibe. Let's set the vibe. Let's get it going. Personally, every system that I've ever touched had one goal, and that was to make someone feel something. In AV, we are really good at debating specs, text speeds, right? Signal flow, is it bright enough? Pixel, pixel pitch, all that good stuff, right? DSP chains, we can debate about this for days on, right? How long did we actually debate about AV over IP before we realized that it was actually here to stay? And don't get me wrong, I love debating with the best of them. I will get out there and argue it to death because that's a great time. We are a bunch of nerds and we do enjoy talking tech specs and speeds and feeds. But underneath all that, I believe there is something deeper, right? There's emotion, there's connection, there's that one moment where you can actually be inside of an experience and forget that the technology even exists. And that is the magic moment where I believe technology meets storytelling. So let me introduce myself a little bit as well. I am Alicia Henley, aka the Smooth Factor, which is how most of you know me from social media. But before I even took a stage like this or started talking about storytelling and strategy, I was the girl behind the console, right? I was the person who was stage managing, running lights, running audio. It all came into play. I started out with the end user experience. And if you know me since the beginning, you know me for rise and grind, right? I was deep in the trenches, from stadiums to theaters to arenas to hotels. I mean, conference centers to churches, you name it. I've probably mixed a show in one of those venues at some point in time. I've run front of house, did Monitor World, live and slept in Monitor World a couple of times. I've designed lighting for things like the Nutcracker, directed football games, and had some really great times hanging massive LED walls. But that grind taught me something very early on in my career, that every button I pushed and every fader I rode, even every cable I taped down, it just wasn't technical. It was about storytelling. It was about making people feel something. So, fast forward to today, I get to build relationships and strategy as part of one of the largest microphone manufacturers in the world. Shout out to my Sennheiser team. But also at the same time, I'm building my own business. Brick by brick, I'm creating content for AV brands around the world. So, today, when we talk about the human side of AV, I'm not speaking from just a theory. I've lived every part of this thing. I did a short stint in integration. I was an end user, and now I'm a creator, and even bigger than all that, a connector. And that's why I believe the work that we do in AV isn't just technical, it's transformational. Because here's the thing, gear matters, absolutely. Specs matter, that is how we design things. But what stays with people long after the power has shut off, long after a room or meeting is no longer going? What makes those clients call you time and time again, and for good reasons, right? What makes them call you back for all the right reasons? And what makes people step into a space and say, wow, this was really cool? Uh, and I hate to break it to you, sometimes it is the big, bright, sexy digital signage. But most of the time, it isn't the technology, it's the emotion that technology helps deliver. So let's just stop and think about this really quickly. The best concert you've ever been to, the very cool museum that you've been to. Let's think about Art Tech House, for instance, that has kind of just stopped you in your tracks. That's where everything just flows, right? That meeting that just went effortlessly. When you're in those moments, you're not thinking about model numbers. No, you're not saying, oh, this X32 sounds great. No, you were in the story. And that's what I want to explore today, right? How is AV evolving from one, function to feeling, from installation to immersion, or from systems to stories? This is going to be the bulk of our conversation today. But as I said, I'm very interactive, so I need you guys to talk back to me a little bit. So before we go deeper, I want you guys to drop one word in the chat that describes what you want people to feel when they have entered a space that you've either helped design, program, or install. So I'll give you a few seconds. I'll have a little dance party over here. Why you guys drop that in the chat? Because you know I gotta have a little bit of a dance party. But let's check it out. All right, all right. See some things starting to come in. Um, all of those words that you just listed are exactly what this is about. Because when you design for emotion, everything else aligns. One thing that we are is that we are more than integrators and engineers. We are experienced architects, storytellers with our road gear all over the place, right? We're bringing that technology to tell stories. But most of all, we are the creators of connection. And when we lead with that mindset, the human side of AV becomes the most powerful part of what we do. So let's just dig into a truth that I've learned over the years when it comes to this industry. Technology alone does not inspire trust or loyalty. People do. And in every connection we create, every brand we help, every system we design is really about building trust through creating an experience. That's where the human side of AV begins, in the relationships we build and how we show up for others. Yes, relationships is the foundation of every business. But how do we take that from specs to stories? When I first started out, I was very obsessed with specs. Yes, I needed to make sure my gain structure was correct. I wanted frequency range to be on point. I needed to tune the room to perfection. And yes, that's needed, right? Precision matters. But one day it really hit me, even the cleanest systems don't mean anything if you don't feel anything when the content coming through it doesn't make you feel, right? Every AV system we build is telling a story. So let's start with a question. I'm going to ask a ton of questions because that's how I've built my career this far. Asking questions, right? So I'm going to ask you a few. But the biggest question today is, do we know what story we're trying to tell? And this starts with mindset, right? Throughout this conversation, let's shift those mindsets from our usual functions to new things, right? So, mindset number one, let's shift from function to feeling. A boardroom used to be about, I don't know, clear audio and crisp video. Now it's more so about belonging. Can everyone see and feel and be heard, whether they're in the room or halfway across the world? A hybrid classroom used to be about visibility. Now it's more so about engagement. We are focused on camera angles, we're focused on mic pickup, and to an extent, we're focused a little bit more on lighting now because all of this affects how people feel included in the space. AV has evolved from helping people see and hear to helping them connect and belonging. So, what are the tangible aspects of this? Imagine designing a boardroom. You could install state of the art microphone system, right? 4K, 8K displays. And if we're feeling, froggy, let's say we have that new expensive OLED in the building, right? But what if you added adaptive lighting that adjusts to time of day, which supports energy levels and focus? What if your audio DSP was tuned not to just be clear, but also comfort? Make it a room that's inviting so voices sound natural instead of sterile. Those choices build connection. And this is where we're going in the future because they make people feel invited to collaborate. Another mindset shift that we need to take is from installations to experiences. We used to say, if it's working, nobody notices the AV people in the back of the room dressed in black, right? We're tech ninjas. But in this day and age, that's not enough anymore. The best systems are no longer invisible, they're immersive. So when you walk into a space that's been designed properly, you don't just see the tech, you feel the intention of the tech behind the story. So let's break this down a little bit. How can we make a space feel intentional? And I think that starts with using creative technology tools, right? Use spatial audio to direct your focus during presentations. Add interactive signage that responds to the presence of a person in a room and not just static content. Maybe calibrate your signage to not just be focused on, is it bright enough? Let's make it more of a content focus. What is the story that is living on this piece of technology? Let's coordinate lighting and sound transitions during events to create rhythm and anticipation. I kind of wish I had a little bit of music going right now, because I don't know if you guys are, still with me, but it would basically bring this all together so that we're having more of a rhythm, more of an experience, more of a connection. And this is how we can continue to design for kind of that install to immersion. Our third mindset shift needs to be from systems to stories, right? Every project, whether it's a stadium, hotel, college campus, there has to be three stories. And those three stories consist of a brand story, what's the message it sends? The second is the human story, how people feel in it. And then the technical story is how we bring it to life, right? That's where our techs and specs live. So here's some tangible examples. At a hotel, say the brand story is obviously hospitality. The human story is belonging and resting. And the technical story is the lighting scenes, ambient audio, displays in the lobby or in the rooms. And all of those things have to work together to reinforce calm. But when all of those do align, technology completely disappears and impact takes over. So I'm going to throw something back at you guys so we can keep this conversation going. Drop in the chat one tangible detail from a past project that made people say, wow, right? What gave it the wow factor? Was it a speaker placement, which most people won't notice? Was it a visual cue? Did you have the right designers flowing on your digital signage? Let me know in the chat. We'll take a few seconds and brief dance party. So all of those details that you guys are starting to list there in the chat, those are your storytelling tools. They're how your expertise becomes invisible but unforgettable, because we need to start thinking about how we design for emotion. Every great experience starts with, yes, more questions. But how do we want people to feel when they walk in a room? That emotional blueprint, it shapes everything that follows. So let's talk about three elements of human-centered AV design. One is emotion, two is the experience, and three, we're going to dive into energy because we need all three of those to align, again, to strike that magic chord. So the starting point is emotion. Emotion sets the tone. This is where the discovery begins. If we're talking about practical framework, when you're designing for emotion, let's think about what are three things or three pieces of emotion that your clients want their end users to feel when they walk into a space. Is it excited? Is it engaging? Is it something deeper to where they really need to connect with, say, board members, right? And have those hard conversations. Does it need to be a calm space to have those hard conversations? I think when we ask our clients about what emotions need to be held in a room, then we can really design for that. Then we can start thinking about maybe things that are out of our scope of work, right? Color palette, lighting, temperature, audio texture. Sometimes we leave that up to the architects, but we need to be more a part of this conversation because it's just as important for us on the AV side. Let's look at some of the environments that we're talking about, right? You look at SEGD style brand environments, right? Those are things that are really emotional and thought provoking. Let's look at AVISPL's innovation centers. They evoke emotion, especially the one up in Chicago. But before you read a single tagline or anything like that, it's very intentional. And that's what we need to become, more intentional. When we're thinking about storytelling in a space, we need to experience the path. When you walk into a room, think about where a person is starting and where their journey is ending. Here's how you apply that. You map the journey from entrance to exit, right? You walk through the space yourself. Identify spaces in the room that need to peak emotion or need to be very focused on collaboration, right? Identify emotion peaks. Where will people react? Where in the room are people going to be engaging? And where in the room will people be kind of just off to the side, maybe trying to decompress? When you align AV triggers to those moments, audio cues, visual transitions, or even ambient lighting, that's where things begin to change, right? You can use lighting to tell you where to look. You can use audio to pull you closer. And you can apply these at scale, even in a classroom. Use sound reinforcement to spotlight curiosity. Lighting to emphasize collaboration zones. It's about budget to an extent, but it's also about intentional design. So when you know what you're designing for, maybe the budget could shrink, maybe the budget expands, but think about intentionality first and then work your way around that. The third thing we need to figure out is energy. Yes, everything is vibes. This is the lasting impression. This is what makes your clients call you back. Energy is that invisible thread that connects people, systems, and stories. You can't measure it, but you can feel it, right? You feel the vibes. Tangible ways to design for energy. What does that look like? Maybe introducing dynamic lighting scenes. Again, tune sound system for warmth and depth. Use motion sensors to create responsive AV, spaces that come alive when people enter them, right? Sometimes the room is completely dead, but when you walk into the space, what makes it come alive? I think really good examples of this over the years has been esports, because esports was something that didn't exist before. You're literally in an arena watching people play games online. So you're designing for a virtual experience, but also an in-person experience. I saw a couple of esports venues throughout this year, and I think those spaces are very well designed and designed intentionally, right? Every light, every sound cue and pixel amplifies the intense anticipation of the fan experience. That's engineered energy. So when you're planning your next project, start with the feeling, map the journey, and then layer in the energy. When you design this way, you kind of step back, and instead of asking the question, does it work? You can start asking the question of, does it actually move people? So the last part of this is really the future of AV. It has to be human, because we're not just living through a technical revolution. We're kind of living through a human one, right? The whole world has changed from everything we used to know. People act differently, businesses are different. It's all completely different, and we need to move our industry forward in a different way. So the next frontier of AV isn't about what's possible. I think it's more so about what's meaningful. We've mastered clarity, we've mastered coverage, and we even mastered control. But I think we need to focus on how we master the art of connection. We can do that with three things. I'm going to throw a buzzword out there. And Steph and I were actually on a panel a few weeks ago where we were talking about buzzwords. But I think we can master that connection with a few different things. AI with empathy. So, right now, AI without empathy is just efficiency, which is great. The power comes when tech supports human behavior instead of replacing it. So, think about this: AI driven microphones that learn speaker dynamics and EQ for comfort, not just volume, right? Think about systems that track user preferences, preferred light seating, preferred lighting scenes, audio zones, and adapt to, creative safety measures, right? You want people to feel safe in these rooms. And that is not just AI by itself. I think that is authentic intelligence. Another thing we really have to consider as our industry is growing and we're moving in new directions that we've never been before, I think we need to consider inclusive innovation. When we open the table, let's invite diverse voices. When we do that, technology becomes more inclusive, right? So, what does that look like? Maybe we include a diverse review panel before or during a design validation process. We could even do that with products. Before you release a product, let's find ways to connect with the team, bring diverse voices to the table, and make sure that it's accessible. Think about voice control, captioning, visual contrast. How is this going to affect different people throughout the world, right? How is this going to connect people that feel and have different emotions? We need to be more aware of those things. And I think a good way to do that is to partner with educational institutions, right? Higher ed. They have a lot of challenges that they are trying to fix for a lot of different people in one space, right? So if we can connect with higher ed and see how they are making those connections with their students, whether they have disabilities or are just come from different diverse backgrounds, they have to find ways to connect with those students. And I think our technology is a part of that conversation and how we connect to others in a space. So, yes, diversity isn't a metric, but it is a multiplier for innovation. And we need some of that moving, right? We need some innovation coming up in the next few years. The third thing I would say is content. We have kind of always put content on the back burner, but content is the new connector. We used to say content is king, but content is really the heartbeat of our world currently, right? Everybody wants content, digital signage, hybrid events like this, interactive video walls. All of it is powered by AV, but the magic is in what the content actually communicates. So let's not put content to the wayside. Let's make it a part of what we do. Think about having content templates for your clients. If you're an end user, think about what your content templates look like internally, right? Is there somebody that you hire for that? Is that somebody you outsource? Because there is a lot of teams that you can outsource from a creative aspect that bring this all together. It just depends on how your team is set up, but content can no longer sit on the back burner. Create those templates, right? Let's integrate real-time data. That can help tell the story. Your dashboards tell you user behavior. Imagine that. If your dashboard told you this room was used, this room was used, this room was never touched, right? This is something we've kind of talked about in theory in the past, but now this is very possible with a lot of different tools, right? Make sure you are monitoring the behavior of these spaces that you have designed, installed, and built. And then lastly, I would say let's empower clients to tell their story through the system. Content is how we merge storytelling and technology. That is human centered design because we can automate systems, virtualize meetings, simulate presence with avatars and things, but we can't automate authentic connection. That's something that still remains human. So, AV, all of us in this space, we are the translators between technology and emotion. I think we should ask ourselves when we are creating these spaces, how do we honor the people inside of these spaces? How does it make them feel capable? How does it make them feel included? How does it inspire them even? I think we just all want to feel something. We all need to be back inspired. And that's the questions the next decade of AV will be built on. We have to think of it as reclaiming the A in AV. Now, listen, I'm not going to say audio, even though I'm an audio head. I know that's what you guys thought I was going to say. The A, I think, needs to start standing for authenticity because we need authentic voices. We need authentic stories, and we definitely need authentic experiences. That's what's going to keep this energy flowing. So every time I walk into a room, a booth, a boardroom, a ballroom, conference room, whatever you want to call it, I like to stand in that space and feel the energy before I even hear a single sound or see anything on the wall. Because energy, vibes, that's the universal language here. It tells you if people feel welcome, if the story is landing, or if the tech itself is actually helping or hurting the environment. So go off your energy. Let's get back to using our gut feeling because energy is everything. During this conversation, we started with specs and feeds, right? That's what's measurable. That's our bread and butter of our hardware systems. That's where we've always been. We moved into the stories, which is the meaningful. And now we end with the energy because that's what's memorable when people leave and walk out of a space. Let's just take a second and reflect, right? So the next time you finish a project, step into the room before the client sees it. You may or may not do this now, but don't look. I just want you to sit and listen. Feel the space. Does it hum? Does it have a very high noise floor? Does it breathe? Does it invite connection? Because that is energy design, and that's a place where we should be coming from. Back when I was running front of house and lighting and directing football games, hanging LED walls, all that good stuff, to now helping a global mic brand connect people through sound. Every step of my journey has really taught me similar things. And one of those is that technology is only as powerful as the people who use it with purpose. So when we start to understand that every system becomes a stage and every meeting room is more of a moment, to every install being an opportunity to connect, this is where the human side of AV comes into play. So here's a challenge. Don't just think about clarity. Let's think more about chemistry. Let's not get complacent in what we've done for the last 20 years. Let's find a way to continue to chase the excitement of perfection, you know? Let's chase presence. Can you feel presence in a room? And don't just check for connections. Yes, we have to check our end-to-end points, but let's find out a way to actually create human connection beyond the technology. Because when we design experiences people can feel, we build stories that amplify that human effect, that human factor. We can create energy that connects the world. I always tell people that we aren't doing anything that's saving lives, but in reality, we are the transport when it comes to helping people that are actually saving lives, right? Whether that's in a hospital, uh, government rooms, right? We are the foundation of that, and that is our legacy. So now I want to hear from you. What's one more tangible thing that you will do differently today going forward to design for that human connection? Drop it in the chat. Let me see what you guys are thinking. As you know, those things continue to roll in the chat. Let's just talk about some takeaways here. Emotion drives design. That's true. Specs, they do serve the story because we can't do it without the specs. But experience builds connection. So every detail tells part of this narrative. Energy sustains impact, which is what we need. We need more impact. It's what people remember when everything else fades, right? The lights go dark, they won't forget that impact. And if you hold on to these kind of key points, you'll never build a room that's just functional, because functional is cool. But we need to build spaces that feel alive so people can do their best work. Keeping people's stories and helping them create it is how we make people feel. So keep designing spaces with emotion. Think about how you want to feel when you're in that space, because that's what's most important. How people connect, how people collaborate, and we can't just continue to do hang and bang jobs. So let's do a different approach as we embark on a new territory into a new decade, right? I feel like everything is moving so fast but so slow at the same time. But as we move into these new spaces and find ways to interact and connect with people, let's remember that energy is everything. Obviously, use your texts and specs and feeds and all that good stuff, but change your mindset to really focus on how you can design AV for emotion and connect to that human side. Because what we do is we tell stories. We just haven't done it great in the past, but we still have an opportunity to move the industry forward. So, if you have any questions, let me know. On the bottom of the screen, there should be a QR code or something that will take you to my LinkedIn. I would love to continue this discussion because what else do? We debate in AV. Let's have a debate about how we move forward. And I look forward to talking to you all soon, connecting with you all soon. Again, shout out to rAVe Pubs for having me. Have a great day, everybody.